And we identified we identified the learning target and then the power standard basically that it would be matched up to. And the quiz was on the English Civil War. So we did a couple days of instruction on it. That was our learning target. It stayed constant really for the 2 or 3 blocks of instruction. And then our power standard that it was aligned to. Students will be able to establish and determine the relationships between historical events. And we've as a department, have written 4 power standards that really sort of umbrella everything we do. So for us, I felt like it was easy for us to sort of plug these things in a little bit. And I don't want to say easy necessarily, but I felt like the assessments we currently give are workable within the standards we currently have. So the first part of the test, I should say, was 10 multiple choice questions, and then the second part was a reading passage. And as a building, we've been working on developing some tools to assess how students identify the main idea. So in this passage, they were asked to use active reading strategies and then identify the main idea. And then the last part of the test, which I didn't really reference up here, was a short vocabulary activity. So if I scroll down,
Oh, yeah. Right. Let's clarify.
Okay, so and we'll show you basically the top tier of the rubric we developed for both standards. Now remember, the multiple choice was aligned to power standard number 1, and that's going to be in red. So I took the 10 questions and basically parted out what would be some of the lower level identification type questions, and then the ones we had some of the more complex skills, and then built some criteria that would allow, when this was assessed, to differentiate for that. So the mastery score for the multiple choice section, aligned with power standard 1, would be student made no errors or omissions regarding complex tasks, inferential thinking, analysis, or evaluation, and has made no major errors or omissions regarding simple tasks like identification, and we targeted some of the questions that do both of those things. So mastery level there, they definitely have to hit those top level thought processes. And then if you look at the proficient level, they've made few errors or omissions regarding the complex tasks, so they can make some. But again, this would be, when we put this together, it'd be subject to our judgment on how many is a few. All right, it's hard to put a number on it because then you're kind of back in the points world. So the rubric's kind of written that way to allow for some judgment. And then again, has made no major errors or omissions regarding some of the simple tasks. And I know that were 2 major errors, that's up to my own judgment, but I've had students that take tests in the points world that get the hardest ones right, make a small error on something else, and they end up with the same score as somebody else. And I don't always see that as equal, and I thought that this would be a much better way to communicate how they're doing on different types of questions by developing tools like this. And then the second rubric example up there is really for the main idea, and that's taken right from something we did in PLC. We really kind of hammered out what we thought should be included in a mastery level main idea statement. We narrowed it down to 1 sentence. We wanted to be able to summarize, not only identifies the overall topic, but several characteristics of that topic. And in other rubrics, we also included that they would demonstrate that they use these reading strategies that we're teaching. And then the proficient level uses active reading strategies to identify the main idea, 1 sentence, and has maybe 1 characteristic. So the mastery level, they're summarizing a little bit more than they are at the proficient level. Can you do what you did against the And I'll just show you then a couple of the examples, because I think that's it for my part. I did include some of what the questions would look like there. We just pulled them, and this was a smaller quiz, so it was really manageable to do this. It's going to take some time if you're trying to pull apart 45, 50 question multiple choice test. But what we're trying to do now in the PLC groups is develop some tools to address that there are differences in how students are going to answer And we talked about our exam today, and we're building some tools to look at vocabulary, because last year we gave this exam where students did this vocabulary activity where they had to group vocabulary words, and some of the groupings were clearly advanced, where they were doing multiple things with the headers and putting different words in there, and then others were real basic, like they put things associated with kings. In the point world, it would be hard to like give a third of a point here and 3/4 of a point here for this answer, and we ended up talking about how we weren't really happy with how that ended up because we felt some students had better answers than others, but we're giving points out by guessing what they may have meant. So we're building some tools, kind of like the main idea tool, that will allow for a mastery level to be clearly communicated to the students. It's easier for us then to score them because we don't have to decide half points or quarter points. You know, if they hit this level, they achieve that standard. So we're even working on parting out our final exam now as we're finishing it up. And that's on the report card piece. You can see there the target and the standard are both labeled there, as well as the main idea one. And they had a 4 in one area and a 2 in the other. And then we talk about that. And then I think that's it, right?
Yeah, and we take at the end, we're looking at this, within this particular power standard and that learning target, through the course of that grading period or whatever you're looking at there, you're looking at that across, and you see that we're using the mode in this case, and the mode happens to be 4, and if you look at power standard 2, again, same assessment, but broken out a little bit differently. And you see that their mode, they've taken another assessment, they've scored a 3 in that particular area. And so you have to, when you have 2 left, you don't have a mode, you have a 2 and a 3, so you take the average of those to come up with the 2.5 here. And then looking at the high school report card, people had questions about how this would all look, how this could look. And I wanted to get a picture of, here's the power standard number 1 reporting out, here's power standard number 2 reporting out. But then the important piece to remember is that you can go back to Power School to see the specific learning target and how students did right there. I mean, that's the important piece. That's the piece that we're missing. And obviously, you can't list every standard on the report card. It would take pages and pages and pages. But I think it's going to be important for us to have another document that shows parents what the learning targets are under particular standards or power standards per se that go into that grade, and they can actually see that in grade 1. And at the high school level, if we were to take those power standards then in that level category and then average those, you could get an overall grade to report out to post-secondary universities or institutions, and you still are getting feedback that we don't have now. We're getting a higher level of feedback. So, thanks, Brad.